Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Packers minicamp concluded on Thursday. That's when I'm recording this video. Whenever you watch it, might be a later date and time. And today, talking about the wide receiver position, to me, as minicamp concludes, and now we've got training camp coming up in 6 weeks. And then training camp will roll into the preseason, which rolls into the regular season. When you break Green Bay's roster down by position, to me, there may not be a more fascinating position on the roster to watch in training camp, preseason, and carrying into the regular season than the wide receiver position. And there's many reasons for that. By the way, Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciate all the support. You talk about a numbers game to start with. Most teams, the rule of thumb is you carry 6 wide receivers. Maybe you have 5 active on game day, but you carry 6 typically on an NFL roster. And you look at the locks for Green Bay, like wide receivers who are surely going to be a part of the final 53-man roster, barring something completely unforeseen. And it's Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and it's kind of funny because those 3 are still very young, right, in their own right, but they're kind of the veterans of the group, I guess, outside of Mecole Hardman, but Mecole's a new face to the wide receiver room for Green Bay, and we'll get to him down the road. But you talk about the veterans of the group, and it's these young guys, right, that are mid-20s, entering the prime of their careers, but it is Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. Those 3, and I'm leaving Christian Watson out of this for now because he'll likely start the year on the PUP list. But you've got Doubs, Reed, Wicks. Those are your 3 vets, locks for the roster. And then you have your 2 draft picks. And it wasn't a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round draft picks. You took Matthew Golden in round 1. You take him under the hope that sometime in the not-so-distant future, he can maybe be a number 1 wide receiver and a true number 1 wide receiver on your team. You take him in the first round out of Texas. He's a lock. And you take Savion Williams, who, he's a hybrid player, right? That frog package at TCU where he would line up at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, but he's listed as a wide receiver. You would expect him to get most of his work at wide receiver. Maybe they put him in the backfield in certain situations. He is, Green Bay's version of what Deebo Samuel was to San Francisco. That's the hope, but he's a lot bigger, 6'4" frame for Savion Williams, but you used a 3rd round pick on the TCU product. That's the larger point here. He's a lock to make the roster, again, barring something unforeseen. And so you talk about training camp battles, and we often are looking at left tackle. Is it going to be Jordan Morgan? Is it going to be Rasheed Walker, right guard? Is it going to be Sean Ryan, Anthony Belton, the 2nd-round pick out of North Carolina State? Could Jordan Morgan fall back into that competition if Rasheed Walker wins the battle at left tackle? When talking about starting battles, there are some really, really fascinating ones to follow. I think the slot at corner, is it going to be Hobson, Nixon on the outside and Bullard at slot, and as simple as that? Or could it be Carrington, Valentine, and Nixon on the outside, and then Hobbs plays the slot? Those are going to be interesting, intriguing battles to follow along with. But the numbers game at wide receiver has fascinated me. Again, typically, rule of thumb, you're going to keep 6, maybe you only have 5 elevated on game day. Well, Green Bay's got some locks, like I just mentioned. Doubs, Reed, Wicks, Golden, Williams. That's 5 right out of the chute. But then you keep looking down the roster and down the depth chart, and you're like, well, shoot, they've still got Malik Heath, and he's been a productive player first 2 years in the league, both with Green Bay. I think when Malik Heath has had an opportunity, he's been pretty good. He's been serviceable. And then you bring in Mecole Hardman, and it's like, yeah, you bring in Mecole Hardman because Christian Watson suffers a torn ACL in Week 18. You realize we need a speed demon. We need someone who can, when he's on the field, is a threat to take the lid off the defense. And you bring Mecole Hardman in free agency for that reason. But then you go and draft Matthew Golden, and it's like, okay, there's our young speed demon that can kind of do it all. The route tree's a lot bigger. You trust him a lot more. After a while, you would hope, right? Mecole Hardman is a guy who had a walk-off touchdown on the receiving end of things in a Super Bowl for Kansas City against San Francisco in overtime, a walk-off touchdown reception. But his role really dwindled in 2024 for Kansas City. I think he only had 12 receptions total in the year. The snap count totals were not there. He comes over to Green Bay. He offers you a vertical threat, but he also offers you a guy who can be your kick returner, your punt returner, and he's open to doing that in those roles. And then there's Bo Melton. And Bo Melton, another guy, caught a big touchdown in a playoff game 2 years ago against San Francisco. Really, really important part of the teams for Green Bay. And we know they love their versatility. And when you talk about back-end guys, really specifically on Green Bay's 53-man roster, and I'm sure other organizations, practice this method as well. But when you get to the back end of that 53-man roster, we know how much Green Bay loves its versatility in general. But if you're someone who's fighting for a roster spot, but you can also flourish in the special teams department, you have a better shot of making it in Green Bay than someone who might be, just throw out any position, like someone who might be an inside linebacker, but doesn't offer you that on teams. And if you're balancing hey, Bo Melton against player ABC for one of the final 53-man roster spots, and you're like, well, Bo Melton gives you what he does at wide receiver, but he is a crucial part to Rich Bisaccia's special teams unit, and so that can give you a leg up on the competition. And now we're seeing that Matt LaFleur and company have been using Bo Melton at cornerback, and sort of like a running joke, it lined up with when they released Jair Alexander, and you're wondering oh my gosh, you're trying to transition a wide receiver to cornerback. Is this real? Is this just something they're flirting with? How valid is this? And you look at what Goody said, and Goody said a couple days ago, and I quote, talking about Bo Melton at corner, we've talked about this for a couple of years, just his skill set, how versatile he is. You watch him on special teams, and you're like, wow, he can probably do some of that. I think it's something we're going to look at and see if it's a possibility. Bo is everything we want in a football player out there as far as his ability as a receiver, certainly on special teams as well. If he's able to add this to his arsenal, that makes him really, really valuable to us. And so, again, you're looking at a situation where typically a team will keep 6 wide receivers. You already have 5 locked in for Green Bay. Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, Golden, Williams. And when Watson comes off the PUP list at some point in time in the season, that's your 6th. And so you're really looking at 3 other guys where it's like, man, Mecole Hardman, although that role was diminished in Kansas City in 2024 and he just didn't have the same opportunities he did in years past, that's a guy who in most other circumstances is making a 53-man roster. I think Mecole Hardman's 27, still a good vertical threat, has all the makings of being, a good teammate, a guy you want in the locker room, the versatility of, hey, he can also be a return man. That's valuable. That holds weight, especially I would say more so in the punt return game. Kick returns have kind of really been watered down with the new rule. Teams still willing to take touchbacks. They're trying to extend it out even more to invite teams to want to return it more. We'll just see how that plays out this year. But Mecole Hardman has some versatility, and I think if you look around league-wide, he's a guy that typically probably isn't sweating out a spot on a 53-man roster in most situations. But for Green Bay, there's a numbers game, and you aren't seeing a lot of teams that are going to carry 7 receivers. You're not seeing any that are going to carry 8, 9. But with Green Bay, to me, they're in a spot, and it's fine. I mean, it just comes with the nature of everything. But the Packers are going to have to cut ties with some pretty valid production at wide receiver, because I don't see a scenario where the 5 locks that I mentioned, the 2 rookies and the 3 vets, are all in place, and then somehow Green Bay says, man, with the versatility of Hardman and Bo, we'll keep both of them, and you know what, we'll keep Malik Heath too. It's just not realistic to expect that. And so there's legit competition. There's going to be a chopping block at wide receiver. I'm sure Bo Melton recognizes that, and so that's why, he sounded fine and very open to it when he was talking to reporters about playing corner a little bit in minicamp. But I'm sure he recognizes what I'm talking about and what some of you recognize. And let me know what you guys and gals think. And again, always appreciate everyone tuning in. Mitch Ham on YouTube. Please click the subscribe button. We're closing in on 200. Would love to have that by the start of training camp or somewhere right around there. So we're at 180 right now. And I'm sure Bo Melton looks around and canvasses the scene, and he's like, man, if I can, add another layer to my game, it gives me a better shot to carve out a spot on this 53-man roster. And again, you're talking about a guy who had a big touchdown catch in a playoff game in Santa Clara just 2 years ago. And Malik Heath, I think his probably shining moment was that 2 years ago when he was a rookie? I think it was 2 years ago. Monday Night Football in New York, he catches a touchdown, a go-ahead touchdown with less than 2 minutes left. I believe it was less than 2 minutes left. And at the time, you're thinking, hey, Green Bay, going to walk away with a primetime win against the New York Giants. And lo and behold, Joe Barry does Joe Barry things and lets Tommy DeVito drive right back down the field, and the Giants end up winning that game. But all these guys have had moments in their careers, and two of them with Melton and Heath have had really good moments in Green Bay. And again, I'm going back to Wednesday's minicamp practice, and on the last play, you've probably seen the clip. The Packers tweeted out the slow motion version of it. The last play of minicamp practice on Wednesday, Love drops one into the breadbasket, just an absolute seed. I like to call it a Dippin' Dot. Just drops a seed to McCole Hardman for a 70-yard touchdown to end practice. And when I was watching that clip, and it's not a shot at McCole Hardman in any sense, but when I was watching that, I was like, shit, like they have McCole Hardman too, because again, I'm anticipating what the rookie year could look like for Matthew Golden. I'm excited to see how Matt LaFleur incorporates Savion Williams and the many things he can do as a hybrid player on this offense. I'm excited to see if Romeo Doubs can continue to be that reliable threat. I'm pumped and wondering and waiting to see again if Jaden Reed can look like the guy we saw in the first month of the 2024 season instead of the guy we saw down the stretch run who was invisible at times, not a big part of the game plan and really just inconsistent and dealing with a lot of drops, he and Dontavian Wicks. Like all these things I'm excited about, and then you see that 70-yard touchdown pass to McCole Hardman, you're like, they got a legit little vertical threat here that, you know, you can filter into the offense, but is he even going to make the roster? You know, that's when I started thinking about the numbers game, and it's a valid discussion to have, and it's going to be really, really intriguing to see how it plays out in training camp. Because again, it's a harsh reality to accept, but it's a realization you have to come to that, you know, Bo Melton, Malik Heath, McCole Hardman, all three aren't going to be on the Packers come week one when Detroit comes rolling into town. It's just not going to happen. And so you have to balance, if you're Green Bay, I just think Goody raving about how valuable Bo Melton is, and we know how much they salivate at versatility, and particularly with the offensive line. You know, you bring a guy in like Jordan Morgan, left tackle at Arizona, but now you try slotting him in at right guard as a rookie before he had season-ending injuries. You draft Anthony Belton, another left tackle at North Carolina State, second round this past April, but he's a guy who you could try out at guard. You have Zach Tom, who's become a really damn good right tackle, but in a pinch, you know, at Wake Forest, he played center too and bounced around. You have Elton Jenkins, tackle guard. Now you're sliding him into center. We know they love versatility. I would imagine they look around and they're like, man, Bo Melton, wide receiver, really key part of the special teams, now cornerback too. And part of it, I think, was the circumstance. Kalen King missed, was it Tuesday and Wednesday's minicamp practice? So Kalen King was out, and who am I missing? There was another corner out. Was it Hobbs? I don't know. There were two corners out, and so Green Bay was like, we don't, you know, we just released Jair. We got two corners out right now, which, you know, is what it is. And so, like, just throw Bo Melton out there. But apparently it had been something they had been pondering, tinkering, thinking about for quite some time now, because, again, was it Goody that said, yeah, we've talked about this for a couple of years just with his skill set and how versatile he is. So they decided to unravel it for minicamp. And now Bo Melton, you know, you talk about a leg up in the competition, his ability to potentially be at least a depth piece at corner, maybe, along with being a wide receiver and a part of special teams, you would think bodes well for his chances, but you only get 53 on the final roster. You're just not going to use 8-9 on wide receivers. It's just not how things typically take shape or how things mold in the NFL when you come to roster construction. When it comes to roster construction, and, you know, there's always an exception to the rule, but you can only do so much. And so it'll be fascinating to watch that battle take place in training camp, because I think you have 5 cemented in spots, barring injury or, you know, as I said, something just unforeseen that we can't predict. You have 5 locked in: Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Matthew Golden, and Savion Williams. And then things really get interesting once Christian Watson comes back, because he's a cemented piece. That's 6. But for now, assuming Watson starts the year on the PUP list, you're going to see those 3 try to take the spotlight, and and not in a selfish way, but to enhance their chances of making the roster. So we'll see what Green Bay does at wide receiver. It's a far different, how do I want to phrase this? What we're going to see at receiver is a far more intriguing storyline than what we're going to see at corner in terms of like, I'm excited to see how things take shape at wide receiver. I'm excited to see how things take shape at corner, but I'm excited for two different reasons. You know, the interest I have in wide receiver is to see who makes it and who doesn't. And, you know, those are tough discussions that are going to have to be had with Goody, LaFleur, and the rest of the brain trust once you do get on the chopping block and down to those cutting days. The interest I have in cornerback is it going to be Nixon and Hobbs on the outside and Bullard in the slot? Or does Carrington get one of those outside spots? Because Carrington doesn't really project as a guy who plays in the slot too much, right? We haven't seen it. Does Carrington get one of those spots on the outside along with Hobbs or Nixon, and then the other guy slides into the slot? And what do you do about the numbers at corner? You know, is Kalen King going to make the roster? Is he going to make it on merit, or is he going to make it on merit plus, you know, we just need bodies because Jair's now gone. Eric Stokes left in free agency. Corey Ballantyne left after 3 years with Green Bay in free agency. Ballantyne's in Indianapolis. Stokes is in Las Vegas. And so I'm interested in both of those positions to see how they take shape, but for far, far different reasons. At wide receiver, you just have a wealth of options. You have a lot of depth. You have a lot of proven talent. At corner, you have proven talent, but the numbers suggest, like, I'm seeing people say, hey, Rasul Douglas is still a free agent. Asante Samuel Jr. is still a free agent. And I'm seeing people throw out names, and the worry for Green Bay is at corner, and we should probably do a different video on this, and we will, but you feel good about your top three, right? Like Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine. That's a good trio at corner. But if one of them goes down, all of a sudden, you know, and I think it was Micah Robinson who was out. I think it was Micah Robinson and Kalen King who missed minicamp practice the other day, which gave Bo Melton an opportunity to step in at corner. And if you just have one go down, and you can say that for a lot of positions, but like wide receiver's not one, right? Like Christian Watson is down. Christian Watson is going to miss the start of the year, but as much as you miss Watson and what he brings to the table, you still have proven commodities right there with Reed and Dobbs, and you have Wicks, who to me is somewhat more of an unknown, and then you have the rookies, you know, your first and third round picks in Golden and Williams. Whereas if you have a corner go down, all of a sudden you're looking at slim pickings because, you know, Valentine, as good as he is, he was a 7th-round pick, and Kalen King was a 7th-round pick last year, and Micah Robinson was a 7th-round pick this year, and those are your investments at cornerback outside of your top two in Hobbs and Nixon. So just a lot of things that'll take place over the next few weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, once training camp starts, and I'm interested to see the numbers game with how it plays out at wide receiver. In corner, we'll do another video on that at some point in time, but I am somewhat worried about the depth, I would say, at cornerback for Green Bay. But for wide receiver, the numbers tell you there is going to be production and valuable production that is cut by Green Bay at the wide receiver spot just because you can't keep them all. And so let me know who you guys think that might end up being as training camp takes place. Like let's say Green Bay keeps 6. I can't imagine anyone out there is saying like, yeah, Savion Williams might be cut, or yeah, you know, Dobbs might be cut. Like, if we're being realistic about it, you have Dobbs, Wicks, Reed, Golden, and Williams. So if I tell you Green Bay is going to keep 6, who do you see getting that last spot? Is it Melton? Is it Heath? Is it Hardman? I know there's other wide receivers on the roster, some undrafted free agents that you scooped up, and you're giving them an opportunity, and those might be practice squad guys. But who do you think gets that 6th spot? And training camp will tell us a lot, but right now it's kind of hard to predict in my opinion. But Bo Melton's versatility, Hardman has versatility. That helps their case. Malik Heath, if you're talking about what advantage he has, like Bo Melton's a smaller wide receiver. McCole Hardman's a smaller wide receiver. Green Bay likes bigger frames. They like guys who can run block. You know, Christian Watson's 6'4", 6'5". Jaden Reed's smaller, 5'11". Hardman, I think, is right around there, and Bo Melton's a smaller wide receiver. Like Malik Heath, I think, is 6'2", 6'2.5". Like, he's got a good frame. He's got like the preferred size that Green Bay would want at wide receiver. He's a willing blocker when he's out there. Like, there's positives for all these guys who could be scratching and clawing for what we assume is that 6th wide receiver spot. Let me know what you think. Always appreciate all the support. Please click the subscribe button. It is Mitch I am on YouTube. We'll see you next time.